Every city has its dirty secrets. This one wears a badge. Behind polished precincts and press conferences, a machine runs like clockwork. Arrests without records, charges without crimes. People who step into police cars and never step out again. The machine needs fresh talent. It finds Officer Ethan Carter, young, hungry, eager to prove power matters more than justice. They teach him well, which doors to knock on, which lives to ruin, which truths to bury. He learns his lessons perfectly, too perfectly. One night, one traffic stop, one wrong target, and the machine starts to break. Because Colonel Alana Briggs isn't just another name to erase. She's the crack in their foundation, the flaw in their system, the mistake that will burn their empire to the ground. They thought they were the predators. They forgot that even hunters can become prey, and some prey bites back. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The night air carried a sharp chill as Officer Ethan Carter adjusted his collar, a smirk playing across his clean-shaven face. 6 months on the force, and he already had the world figured out. The gleaming badge on his chest wasn't just a symbol of authority, it was a shield that made him untouchable. At least that's what his training officer, veteran cop James Wilson, had taught him. "Remember, kid," Wilson's words echoed in his mind. "Out here, we're the law. Some people just need to learn their place." Carter had taken those words to heart, climbing the ranks faster than any rookie in recent memory. His reports always got approved without question, his methods never scrutinized. The right handshakes, the right allies, and most importantly, the right targets. Tonight was another quota operation, a carefully orchestrated dance designed to justify the precinct's inflated crime statistics. The wealthy Oakbrook district, with its manicured lawns and gated communities, needed to show it had its share of undesirables to keep the funding flowing. Carter checked his watch, 11:45 p.m., the perfect time to catch someone who didn't belong. The radio crackled with routine chatter as Carter's patrol car glided past rows of luxury homes. His eyes narrowed as a black Range Rover appeared in his rearview mirror, its sleek frame gleaming under the streetlights. The vehicle was too expensive for this time of night, too clean, too perfect. The driver was alone, a woman from what he could see. Something about her calm, confident posture rubbed him the wrong way. Without hesitation, Carter flipped on his lights. The Range Rover pulled over smoothly, no hesitation, no sudden movements. As he approached the driver's side window, he saw her, an elegant black woman in her late 30s, wearing a tailored business suit that probably cost more than his monthly salary. She sat with perfect posture, hands visible on the steering. "Wheel at 10 and 2. "License and registration," Carter demanded, not bothering with the usual pleasantries. The woman, Alana Briggs, according to her license, handed over her documents without a word. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Carter's tone dripped with practiced authority. "No, officer, I don't." Her voice was steady, cultured, with an edge of intelligence that made him uncomfortable. "Perhaps you could enlighten me." Carter's jaw tightened. "You were swerving back there. Have you been drinking tonight?" "I wasn't swerving, Officer Carter." She read his nameplate with deliberate precision. "And I don't drink. Your dash cam will confirm both facts." The challenge in her voice made his blood boil. Nobody questioned him, especially not here, especially not someone like her. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." "On what grounds?" I said. "Step out of the vehicle." Carter's hand moved to his radio. "Unless you want to add resisting an officer to whatever else we find." Alana's dark eyes studied him for a moment, taking in every detail of his posture, his expression, his poorly concealed anger. "Officer Carter, I'm going to remove my seatbelt. Now please don't mistake any of my movements as threatening." Carter keyed his radio. "Dispatch, I need backup at my location. Subject appears aggressive." Within minutes, 2 more patrol cars arrived, their lights painting the street in alternating red and blue. Officers Mike Taylor and Brad Foster emerged, hands resting casually on their weapons. They'd worked with Carter before. They knew the drill. "What seems to be the problem here?" Taylor asked, his voice carrying the false concern of someone who'd already decided guilt. Subject was swerving, possibly intoxicated, Carter reported. Now she's being uncooperative. Foster moved to the passenger side while Taylor flanked Carter. They had done this dance before. 3 officers against 1 civilian. The intimidation factor usually enough to break most people's resolve. But Alana remained perfectly still, her expression unchanged. "Officers, I understand you have a job to do. However, I want to be very clear that any actions you take right now are being recorded, not just by your cameras." Carter laughed. "Is that a threat, ma'am?" "No, Officer Carter. Just a statement of fact. Out of the vehicle. Now." Carter reached for the door handle. Alana complied with deliberate slowness, each movement measured and precise. As she stood, her height matched Carter's, her presence somehow making him feel smaller despite his uniform and backup. "Turn around, hands behind your back," Foster barked. "I'm assuming I'm under arrest?" Alana's voice remained calm. "I'd like to know the charges." Carter grabbed her arm, spinning her around with more force than necessary. "Driving under the influence, resisting arrest, and we'll see what else we find." As the handcuffs clicked into place, Alana didn't resist. She didn't raise her voice. She simply stated, "I look forward to discussing this in court, Officer Carter." The ride to the precinct was silent, but Carter's mind raced with possibilities. This woman was too calm, too controlled. She needed to learn that in this city, his badge meant more than her money or her attitude. At the station, Sergeant Frank Walsh was waiting. One look at the situation and he knew exactly what to do. The booking process was swift, efficient, and carefully manipulated. Walsh's fingers flew over the keyboard, crafting a narrative of aggression and resistance that never happened. "She tried to strike Officer Carter during the arrest," Walsh muttered as he typed, "showed signs of intoxication and belligerent behavior." A figure appeared in the doorway, Lieutenant Thomas Brooks, one of the highest-ranking officers in the Utah precinct. His presence at a routine booking was unusual, but Carter had learned not to question such things. "No phone call for this one," Brooks ordered. "Let her cool off in holding until morning." As Alana was led away to the cells, Carter caught up with her in the hallway. "You picked the wrong city to act tough in," he sneered. Alana turned to face him, and for the first time, a slight smile crossed her face. The expression sent an unexpected chill down Carter's spine. In the hours that followed, Carter filled out his report, matching Walsh's creative narrative perfectly. Every detail was crafted to justify the arrest, to paint Alana as just another troublemaker who needed to be taught respect for the badge. The night shift wound down, and Carter headed to the locker room, pride swelling in his chest. Another successful operation, another notch in his belt. Wilson would be proud. His protege was living up to every expectation. As he changed out of his uniform, Carter pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages from fellow officers congratulating him on the arrest. The system worked like a well-oiled machine, each piece playing its part perfectly. The judges would rubber stamp the charges, the prosecutors would push for maximum penalties, and another criminal would learn their place in the hierarchy. But if Carter had looked more closely at Alana's expression in that hallway, he might have noticed something beyond her calm exterior. In her eyes was not fear or anger, but the patient calculation of someone who had seen this game before and knew exactly how to tear it down. The sun was rising as Carter left the precinct, his shift finally over. The morning light painted the city in shades of gold, but shadows still lurked in every corner. In one of those shadows, a figure watched Carter's departure, making notes on a phone. The real game was just beginning, and Carter's badge was about to become the heaviest burden he'd ever carried. At home, Carter poured himself a drink, replaying the night's events in his mind. Everything had gone according to plan: the targeting, the backup, the booking. The system that had protected him so far would continue to do so. After all, who would believe some random driver over 3 decorated officers? What Carter didn't know was that at that very moment, in an office across town, Alana sat in her holding cell, her posture still perfect, her expression still calm. She wasn't sleeping, wasn't pacing, wasn't showing any signs of the distress that usually marked a night in custody. Instead, she seemed to be waiting, like a chess player who had already seen the path to checkmate. The precinct buzzed with its usual morning activity. Officers changed shifts, reports were filed, and the machinery of justice, or what passed for it, continued its relentless grinding. But beneath the surface, something was shifting. In the coming hours, phone calls would be made, documents would be unsealed, and the true nature of power would be revealed. For now, though, Carter slept soundly, his badge on the nightstand beside him. He dreamed of promotions, of respect, of the untouchable status that came with his position. But dreams, like power, are fragile things, and sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one who seems to have already lost. The morning sun continued, its climb casting long shadows across the city, shadows that held secrets, lies, and the first tremors of a system about to collapse. Morning light filtered through the Venetian blinds of Captain David Parker's office as he studied Officer Ethan Carter's arrest report, his weathered face creased with concern, eyes scanning each carefully crafted lie. Dropping the papers onto his desk, he gestured for Carter to sit down. "Officer Carter, how long have you been with us now? 6 months?" Parker's voice carried a weight Carter hadn't heard before. "Yes, sir. Almost 7, actually." Carter sat straight-backed, pride evident in his posture. Parker leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Then let me give you some free advice. This one, Alana Briggs, let her go. Write it up as a misunderstanding and we all move on." Carter's confidence wavered for a moment. "Sir, the charges are solid. We have 3 officers confirming." "Sometimes," Parker interrupted, "the smartest thing you can do is recognize when you're poking a bear." He tapped the arrest report. "Some people aren't meant to be messed with. Do you understand what I'm saying?" But Carter didn't understand. Or rather, he didn't want to. His mind raced with thoughts of his perfect record, his rising star status, his reputation among the other officers. "Captain, with all due respect, if we back down now, what message does that send? We can't let people think they can challenge our authority." Parker studied the young officer for a long moment, then sighed heavily. "It's your call, Carter. But remember, I tried to warn you." As Carter left the captain's office, his phone buzzed. A text from Officer Wilson. "Need to talk. Evidence room. Now." The evidence room was quiet, lit by harsh fluorescent lights that cast strange shadows among the shelves of cataloged items. Wilson was already there, along with tech specialist Sarah Reynolds, hunched over a computer terminal. "Close the door," Wilson ordered. As Carter complied, Reynolds tapped rapidly at her keyboard, bringing up footage from the previous night's arrest. "We've got a problem," Wilson said, pointing to the screen. "Your body cam caught some unfortunate exchanges, but Sarah here is going to help us clean it up." Reynolds nodded, not looking up from her work. "I can edit the timestamp metadata, remove the audio from key segments, maybe add some static interference at crucial moments. By the time I'm done, it'll show Briggs being aggressive, just like the report says." Carter watched as Reynolds worked, systematically erasing truth and replacing it with their version of events. The genuine footage of Alana's calm compliance disappeared, replaced by carefully crafted moments of resistance. "What about the dash cam?" Carter asked. "Already handled," Wilson assured him. "The whole system had a technical malfunction last night. Very unfortunate timing." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Carter's phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. "Make her disappear. Transfer her upstate. Cases get lost there all the time." Wilson read the message over Carter's shoulder and nodded approvingly. "Smart move. I know some people in Millbrook. They can hold her for weeks, lose her paperwork, make her life hell until she learns her lesson." But something about the situation had begun to nag at Carter. Why is everyone so interested in this case? It's just a routine arrest. Wilson's expression hardened. "Because discipline requires consistency, kid. We can't let anyone challenge the system. The moment we show weakness, everything we've built starts to crumble. In her holding cell, Alana sat perfectly still, her posture unchanged since the night before. Officers passing by found her stillness unnerving. No demands, no complaints, no signs of distress. Just patient observation, like a scientist studying specimens under glass. Meanwhile, in a coffee shop across from the courthouse, Alana's attorney, Michael Bennett, met with a shadowy figure who spoke in whispers. The unaltered footage, the figure said, sliding a USB drive across the table. Body cams, dash cams, even security footage from nearby houses. They thought they erased everything, but there's always a backup somewhere. Bennett pocketed the drive. Why are you helping us? The figure stood to leave. Let's just say some of us remember what that badge is supposed to stand for. Back at the precinct, Carter joined a gathering of officers in the break room. The atmosphere was celebratory, drinks being passed around despite the early hour. Tutti. Officer Carter. Wilson raised his coffee cup, showing us all how it's done. Nothing happens in this city without our say-so. We're invincible. Cheers echoed through the room, but Carter noticed Captain Parker watching from his office, his expression grim. In the district attorney's office, Prosecutor Thomas Shaw reviewed the case file. His phone rang, a call from the police union president. This needs to stick, the union president said without preamble. Make sure the charges hold up, whatever it takes. Shaw glanced at a photo on his desk, his daughter's college graduation. The tuition had been paid with money that didn't come from his government salary. Don't worry, I know how to handle these things. But in another office, in another part of town, a different meeting was taking place. A group of serious-faced people in suits reviewed documents, watched footage, and made calls. Their movements were precise, coordinated, like pieces moving on a chessboard. Carter spent the afternoon preparing for his testimony, rehearsing his story with Wilson and Reynolds. Every detail had to match perfectly. The altered footage, the falsified reports, the manufactured evidence. Remember, Wilson coached, you saw signs of intoxication. She was belligerent from the start. When you asked her to step out of the vehicle, she became aggressive. Stick to the script. Reynolds pulled up the edited footage again. I've added some subtle movement blur here. Makes it look like she's unsteady on her feet. And this segment, see? How the angle makes it look like she's reaching for your weapon. Carter nodded, but a small voice in his head whispered that they were trying too hard. If everything was as clear-cut as they claimed, why did they need so many layers of deception? In the jail, Alana finally received a visitor, her lawyer, Bennett. Their conversation was brief, conducted under the watchful eyes of correctional officers. Everything is in place, Bennett murmured. Just keep doing what you're doing. Alana's slight smile was the only response. As evening approached, Carter left the precinct, feeling less confident than he had that morning. Captain Parker's warning echoed in his mind, along with the strange intensity everyone was showing over what should have been a routine case. He drove home through the wealthy streets of Oakbrook, past the spot where he'd arrested Alana. A black SUV was parked there now, its windows tinted. As Carter passed, the driver raised a phone, clearly taking photos. Carter's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He considered stopping, asserting his authority again, but something held him back. The weight of his badge suddenly felt different, less like a shield and more like a target. At home, Carter poured himself a drink and tried to sort through the day's events. His phone kept buzzing with messages from other officers, all reinforcing the same message: stick to the story, maintain the line, protect the system. But as night fell, other forces were moving. In secure offices and hidden rooms, people studied documents, made connections, and prepared for what was to come. They moved with the quiet confidence of those who knew they held the real power, not the kind that came from a badge or a gun, but the kind that could tear down entire corrupted systems. Carter's phone buzzed one final time that night, a message from Wilson. Tomorrow's your big day, kid. Show everyone what it means to wear that badge. As he drifted off to sleep, Carter didn't notice the red dot of a camera lens watching from the building across the street, recording every movement, adding to a growing file of evidence that would soon shake his world to its foundations. In her cell, Alana finally lay down to sleep, but her rest was that of a predator, alert, ready, patient. The corrupted system that Carter represented had faced challenges before, but never from someone who understood its weaknesses so completely. The next morning would bring the confrontation in court, where carefully crafted lies would face the cold light of truth. But for now, the city slept, unaware that beneath its surface, forces were aligning for a battle that would expose the true cost of unchecked power. Through the night, various players in this drama remained active. In the evidence room, Reynolds made final adjustments to the doctored footage. In his office, the district attorney prepared arguments based on fabricated facts. In secure locations around the city, Alana's unseen allies gathered more evidence of the precinct's systemic corruption. Carter's dreams were troubled, filled with images of badges turning to dust and walls of blue uniforms crumbling. Even in sleep, some part of him sensed that his world was about to change forever. The power he thought he wielded was about to be tested against something far stronger, the power of truth. The city's lights twinkled through the darkness, each one representing a story, a life, a potential witness to corruption or victim of abuse. Tomorrow, in a courtroom downtown, one small piece of this vast system would face scrutiny. But unlike countless times before, this time would be different. As the night deepened, final preparations were made on both sides. Evidence was organized, testimonies were rehearsed, and strategies were finalized. But while Carter's side built their case on carefully constructed lies, Alana's allies worked with something far more powerful, unaltered truth. In the precinct's parking lot, the last shift change of the night brought fresh officers to duty. They passed Carter's empty patrol car, its dash cam now conveniently repaired, all incriminating footage erased, or so they thought. But in this digital age, nothing truly disappears forever. The first hints of dawn began to touch the city's skyline. Another day was beginning, but this one would be different. In just a few hours, the same courthouse that had rubber-stamped countless corrupt arrests would become the scene of an unprecedented revelation. Carter's badge lay on his nightstand, catching the first rays of morning light. Soon he would pin it to his chest again, believing it still held the same power, the same authority, the same invincibility. But with each passing minute, that illusion drew closer to its end. The next day would bring many things: justice, revelation, consequences. But most importantly, it would bring understanding, the kind that comes when someone finally learns that true power doesn't come from a badge or a gun, but from the courage to stand against corruption, even when it wears a uniform. Morning sun streamed through the courthouse windows as uniformed officers filled the benches. Row after row of blue uniforms created an intimidating wall of support behind Officer Ethan Carter. His confident smirk returned as he straightened his tie, ready to present the carefully crafted story they'd rehearsed. District Attorney Thomas Shaw approached the prosecution table, his expensive suit and polished shoes reflecting his usual attention to detail. He exchanged knowing glances with Carter. They'd done this dance countless times before. The system was a well-oiled machine, and today would be no different. Judge William Harrison entered the courtroom, his black robes flowing behind him. The bailiff's voice rang out clear. "All rise. Court is now in session." The Honorable Judge Harrison presiding. As the gallery settled, Alana Briggs sat quietly beside her attorney, Michael Bennett. Her posture remained perfect, her expression serene. She wore a crisp navy suit that probably cost more than most officers' monthly salaries. Something about her calm demeanor made Carter's stomach tighten slightly. Case number 2025 CR 1872, State versus Briggs, Judge Harrison announced. Charges are driving under the influence, resisting arrest and assault on a peace officer. How does the defendant plead? Bennett rose smoothly. Before entering a plea, Your Honor, I have a sealed document that requires your immediate attention. Shaw's forehead creased. This wasn't part of the usual script. Your Honor, the state objects. We're here for an arraignment. Approach the bench, Harrison ordered, his tone clipped. As both attorneys moved forward, Bennett produced a thick envelope bearing several official seals. The judge opened it carefully, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. His expression remained neutral for several seconds as he scanned the contents. Then something changed. The color drained from his face. Carter watched as Judge Harrison's hands actually trembled slightly while holding the document. The judge looked up at Alana, then back at the paper, then at Alana again. "Clear the courtroom," Harrison ordered suddenly. "Your Honor?" Shaw protested. "This is a public proceeding." "I said clear the courtroom. Everyone except the defendant, counsel, and essential court personnel. Now." The gallery erupted in confused murmurs as bailiffs began ushering people out. Carter started to rise, but Harrison pointed at him. "Officer Carter, you stay." Once the room had emptied except for the key players, Harrison removed his glasses and rubbed his temples. "Ms. Briggs, would you please state your full name and position for the record?" Alana stood, her movements graceful and measured. "Colonel Alana Victoria Briggs, United States Military Intelligence, Special Operations Command. Current assignment, Domestic Operations Oversight Division." The words hit Carter like physical blows. Each one stripped away another layer of his confidence, his certainty, his perceived power. Shaw's face had gone as pale as the judge's. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular." "Mr. Shaw," Harrison cut him off. "I suggest you take a moment to read this before saying another word." He handed the document to the prosecutor. As Shaw read, his hands began to shake just as the judge's had. Carter watched the man's professional demeanor crumble in real time. "Furthermore," Bennett added, rising again, "I'd like to introduce Special Agent Robert Walker from the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division." A man in a dark suit who had been sitting quietly in the back of the courtroom stepped forward. Carter hadn't even noticed him during the previous commotion. "Your Honor," Agent Walker spoke, his voice carrying the weight of federal authority. "We've been conducting an ongoing investigation into systemic corruption within this precinct. Colonel Briggs has been assisting our operation." Carter's world began to spin. Wilson's words echoed in his head. "We're invincible." But now those words sounded hollow, childish, like a kid playing cops and robbers. Judge Harrison cleared his throat. "Given these extraordinary circumstances, all charges against Colonel Briggs are dismissed with prejudice. Additionally," he paused, looking directly at Carter, "I am ordering an immediate investigation into the events surrounding this arrest." "Your Honor," Shaw tried one last time, "the state has clear evidence." "Falsified evidence," Bennett interrupted, producing the USB drive. "We have the original unaltered footage from Officer Carter's body camera, the dash cam, and several nearby security cameras. Would you like to view them now?" Shaw slumped in his chair, defeated. Carter felt sweat beginning to soak through his uniform shirt. "Officer Carter," Agent Walker stepped closer. "I suggest you contact a lawyer. We'll be conducting interviews with all officers involved in this incident, starting with you." Alana finally turned to look directly at Carter. Her eyes held no anger, no satisfaction, just a calm certainty that made him want to disappear into the floor. "This court is in recess," Harrison announced. "Agent Walker, I assume you'll want to secure the precinct's evidence room?" "Teams are already in place, Your Honor. No one enters or leaves without federal oversight." As if on cue, Carter's phone began buzzing with messages. He glanced down to see panic spreading through the department. "Feds at precinct. Evidence. Room sealed. Don't talk to anyone." Wilson had already stopped responding to messages. Captain Parker's warning now seemed less like friendly advice, and more like a desperate attempt to avoid this very moment. "Officer Carter," Alana spoke for the first time since stating her rank, her voice carrying the same calm authority it had during the arrest. "I want you to understand something. This isn't personal. This is about accountability." Carter opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. What could he possibly say? His entire world was unraveling in real time. Special Agent Walker was already on his phone, coordinating with teams at the precinct. "Secure all computers. Full forensic backup of all systems. No one touches anything until our tech team clears it. Bennett gathered his materials, including the damning USB drive. "Colonel, shall we? I believe there's still work to be done." Alana nodded, standing smoothly. As she passed Carter, she paused. "Remember this feeling, officer. Remember what it's like when power shifts from those who abuse it to those who respect it." The courtroom door opened, and a flood of confusion poured in from the hallway. Officers who had been waiting outside tried to make sense of the scene before them, their rookie star looking broken, the typically confident DA slumped at his table, and a woman they'd thought was just another arrest walking out with federal agents flanking her. Carter's phone buzzed again. A message from Sarah Reynolds. "They're imaging all our computers. What do we do?" He didn't respond. Couldn't respond. His fingers felt numb, his throat dry. Judge Harrison was already in his chambers, making calls to the Judicial Review Board. This case would have ripple effects through the entire system. In the courthouse hallway, reporters had somehow caught wind that something big was happening. Cameras flashed as Alana emerged, Bennett and Agent Walker creating a protective barrier around her. "Colonel Briggs," one reporter shouted, "is it true this was part of a federal investigation?" "No comments at this time," Bennett responded smoothly. "All inquiries should be directed to the Department of Justice press office." Carter watched through the courtroom windows as Alana's group moved efficiently through the chaos. She never raised her voice, never showed anything but complete composure. This, he realized, was what real power looked like. Back inside the courtroom, Shaw was hurriedly shoving papers into his briefcase. His hands shook so badly he dropped several documents on the floor. "Officer Carter," Agent Walker had returned. "2 more agents at his side. We'll need you to surrender your badge and weapon pending our investigation." The weight of the badge, which had felt so empowering just hours ago, now seemed to burn against his chest. With trembling fingers, Carter unpinned it, placing it and his service weapon on the table. Outside, the morning sun continued to shine, indifferent to the earthquake that had just shaken the foundations of Carter's world. Officers huddled in, groups, phones pressed to ears, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. In her official vehicle, Alana reviewed messages on a secure phone. Teams were already in place at key locations throughout the city. The operation she'd helped design was proceeding exactly as planned. "Phase 1 complete," she spoke into the phone. "Moving to secondary targets." Carter sat alone in the empty courtroom, his former colleagues having abandoned him the moment things went sideways. He thought about Wilson's lessons, about all the times they'd manipulated evidence, about all the lives they'd impacted with their corruption. Agent Walker returned with more agents. "Officer Carter, we'll need you to come with us. We have quite a few questions about your training officer, James Wilson, and some other members of your precinct." As Carter was led out, he passed Officer Taylor in the hallway. Their eyes met, briefly before Taylor looked away, already practicing his own version of "I was just following orders." In her car, Alana reviewed a tablet showing live feeds from the precinct. Officers were scrambling, shredding documents, deleting files, not realizing that everything had already been backed up, every action now just adding to the evidence of conspiracy. "Colonel," Bennett spoke from the seat beside her, "the senator's office just called. They're requesting a meeting." "I bet they are," Alana replied, her slight smile returning. "Let them sweat for a while. We have bigger fish to fry first." Back at the precinct, the reality of the situation was still sinking in. Officers who had participated in countless corrupt arrests now faced the possibility that their actions would finally have consequences. In the evidence room, federal technicians methodically documented years of tampering, building a case that would expose not just individual corrupt officers, but an entire system designed to protect them. Carter's desk was already being boxed up, his computer tagged as evidence. Photos of him with Wilson and other officers were carefully logged, each image now a potential link in a chain of corruption. The young officer who had started his day believing in his own invincibility now sat in a federal building, waiting to be interviewed, wondering how he'd lost everything so quickly. But in truth, nothing had been quick about this. Alana and her team had spent months building their case, gathering evidence, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Carter's arrogance had simply provided the opportunity they needed, As the day progressed, more revelations emerged. Other officers began cooperating, hoping to save themselves. The carefully constructed hierarchy of corruption began to crumble, each falling piece exposing more rot beneath. In her temporary office, Alana reviewed reports from similar operations across the country. Carter's precinct wasn't unique. It was just the latest domino to fall in a larger effort to root out systemic corruption. "Colonel," Agent Walker appeared in her doorway. "Carter's asking to make a deal. Says he has information about operations we haven't uncovered yet." Alana nodded, unsurprised. They always want to talk once they realize the badge won't protect them anymore. Take his statement, but verify everything. People like Carter tend to mix truth with fiction when they're desperate. The sun was setting by the time the initial wave of arrests and interviews concluded. Carter had spent hours detailing years of corruption, his story matching perfectly with evidence Alana's team had already gathered. In the end, it wasn't the badge that had made Carter untouchable. It was the system behind it. And now that system faced its greatest challenge: sunlight, accountability, and the unwavering determination of those who believed in real justice. The day's events would echo through the department for years to come, a reminder that true power doesn't come from authority alone, but from how that authority is wielded. For Carter and his colleagues, that lesson had come too late. For others watching, perhaps it would serve as a wake-up call. As night fell over the city, Alana's team continued their work, knowing this was just one battle in a longer war against corruption. But for now, they had struck a significant blow. Not just against dirty cops, but against the very idea that a badge could make anyone untouchable. Hours after the courtroom revelation, Colonel Alana Briggs sat in a secure operations center, surrounded by screens displaying years of police records. Each file told a story of corruption, but together they painted a picture of something far more sinister than a few dirty cops. "Look at these promotion patterns," Special Agent Walker pointed to a timeline on one of the screens. Carter wasn't an accident. They deliberately fast-tracked officers with specific psychological profiles. Alana studied the data. Young officers, usually from privileged backgrounds, promoted well ahead of schedule. Each one had shown a willingness to bend rules, abuse authority, and most importantly, stay quiet about others doing the same. Cross-reference these promotions with major financial transfers, Alana instructed. A tech analyst's fingers flew across the keyboard, and new patterns emerged. Every accelerated promotion coincided with large donations to the police foundation from shell companies. "Here's something interesting," Bennett spoke up from his corner, surrounded by stacks of unsealed files. "Remember Lisa Thompson? Missing person case from last year?" Alana moved to examine the file. "The college student? According to official records, she was arrested for disorderly conduct, then released the next morning. Except..." Bennett shuffled through more papers. "There's no booking photo, no fingerprints, no processing documentation at all." "How many more like this?" Alana asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Dozens, maybe hundreds. Young people, mostly from vulnerable populations. They're logged as arrests, but there's no real documentation. They just disappear." Agent Walker pulled up a map on the main screen. Red dots appeared marking locations of similar cases. "The pattern extends beyond this precinct. We're seeing the same MO in departments across 3 states. Alana's phone buzzed. A message from her military intelligence contacts. More pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. "The shell companies funding these departments? They all trace back to private prison contractors owned by United Continental Holdings." United Continental? Walker frowned. "Isn't that Senator Richard Phillips's pet project?" "The same," Alana confirmed. "And guess who sits on the board of directors for the Police Foundation?" A knock at the door interrupted them. Another federal agent entered, looking grave. "Colonel, we found something at one of the warehouses listed in Carter's files. You need to see this." 20 minutes later, Alana stood in a nondescript building on the outskirts of town. The warehouse appeared abandoned from the outside, but inside told a different story. Rows of holding cells, medical equipment, and carefully organized documentation revealed its true purpose. "It's a black site," Walker said, his voice tight with anger. They were running their own private detention facility. Alana examined the medical records scattered across a desk. "These aren't just detention records. Look at the terminology. Processing, transfer status, international placement. This is human trafficking." Back at the operations center, more revelations poured in as officers began turning on each other. Detective Mark Russell, a 20-year veteran, provided crucial testimony. "The system was designed to be invisible," Russell explained, his voice shaking. "We'd target specific types: runaways, addicts, undocumented immigrants, people nobody would miss. The paperwork would show a routine arrest, then a release, but they'd never actually leave custody." "Where were they taken?" Walker demanded. "Different facilities depending on their classification. Some went to private prisons, others to these processing centers. The young, healthy ones." Russell's voice cracked. "They were shipped overseas, Middle East, Eastern Europe. Anywhere, with buyers willing to pay premium rates." Alana's military training helped her maintain composure, but inside her blood boiled. She'd seen similar operations during her overseas missions, but never expected to find the same infrastructure here at home. Her secure phone buzzed again, a message from her old unit commander. "Warning, powerful people are noticing. Watch your back." Almost on cue, a senior Justice Department official appeared on one of the video screens. "Colonel Briggs, I'm ordering you to stand down. This operation is now under internal review." "With all due respect, sir," Alana replied coolly. "This investigation falls under my mandate from Special Operations Command. If you have concerns, take them up with General Morrison." The official's face reddened. "You're disrupting sensitive political relationships." "I'm exposing a human trafficking ring operating under color of law," Alana cut him off. "Any political relationships disrupted by that fact deserve to be disrupted." After ending the call, Alana turned to Walker. "They're starting to panic. We need to move faster." More evidence emerged as they dug deeper. Financial records showed millions flowing through a complex network of shell companies. Each transaction connected another piece of the conspiracy: judges who rubber-stamped warrants, prosecutors who buried cases, politicians who provided cover. Carter was just the tip of the iceberg, Bennett observed, reviewing another stack of files. They deliberately recruited officers like him, young, ambitious, morally flexible, the perfect tools for their operation. In an interrogation room, Carter himself was still talking, desperately trying to save himself. "Wilson told me it was just part of the job. Said everyone did it, that it was how things worked. I didn't know about the trafficking, I swear." But his body camera footage told a different story. Multiple clips showed him personally delivering young arrestees to the warehouse, joking with the staff there, clearly aware of the facility's true purpose. As evening approached, Alana received another warning, this time from a trusted source within the FBI. "Senator Phillips is making calls. High-level people are being pressured to shut you down." "Let them try," Alana replied. "We've already copied everything to secure servers. If anything happens to this investigation, it all goes public." In his Senate office, Phillips slammed down his phone in frustration. Decades of carefully constructed corruption threatened to unravel because one colonel wouldn't play ball. He pressed his intercom. "Get me Director Thompson at the FBI. Now." But Thompson had his own problems. Federal agents were already reviewing his communications with Phillips, uncovering years of coordinated cover-ups. Back at the operations center, Alana's team made another breakthrough. "Found something in the Police Foundation's restricted files," a tech analyst called out. "They've been running a special training program for select officers. Look who's been leading it." The screen showed a familiar face: James Wilson, Carter's corrupt mentor. But he wasn't just training local officers. The program had participants from departments across the country. They were building a network, Alana realized. Training officers to identify potential victims, teaching them how to make arrests disappear, showing them how to manipulate evidence. This wasn't just about profit. They were creating an infrastructure. Walker studied the training records. Over 300 officers have gone through this program in the last 5 years. Each one placed in a strategic position, each one compromised enough to keep quiet. Pull their arrest records, Alana ordered. Cross-reference with missing persons cases in their jurisdictions. The results were staggering. In every city where these officers served, there was a spike in disappearances matching the same profile: young, vulnerable, unlikely to be missed. Another knock at the door. This time, it was a pale-faced junior agent. "Colonel, we found something in the warehouse basement, some kind of recording system." The videos confirmed their worst fears. Hours of footage showing the processing of arrestees, young people, being evaluated, classified, and prepared for transport. Each video included dates, locations, and most importantly, the names of officers involved. "Make copies," Alana instructed. "Multiple secure locations. If anything happens to our investigation, release everything to every major news outlet simultaneously." Her phone buzzed yet again. This time it was a text from an unknown number. "Back off now, or face the consequences. Some secrets need to stay buried." Alana showed the message to Walker. "They're getting desperate. Think they'll try something. Count on it. Increase security at all evidence locations. Nobody goes anywhere alone." As if to prove her point, reports started coming in. A mysterious fire at a records facility. A break-in at a federal evidence locker. A key witness found dead in his cell, officially ruled a suicide. But it was too late for the conspirators. The evidence was too widespread, the witnesses too numerous. Even as they tried to cover their tracks, more officers were coming forward, hoping to cut deals before everything collapsed. In another part of the city, Detective Jessica Howard sat in her car, clutching a thumb drive. After years of keeping quiet, watching the corruption spread, she'd finally gathered the courage to speak up. Her hands shook as she typed a message to Alana's secure line. "I have proof. Direct links between Senator Phillips and the trafficking operation." She never got to send it. A dark SUV appeared in her rearview mirror, and then everything went black. The news of Howard's accident reached Alana's team an hour later. "Single vehicle crash," the report read. "Driver lost control, no survivors." "They're tying up loose ends," Walker observed grimly. "No," Alana corrected him. "They're giving us more evidence. Every accident, every suspicious fire, every convenient suicide. It all adds to the pattern." She turned to address her entire team. "From now on, we work in shifts. Nobody leaves the secure zone without backup. They're going to keep trying to shut us down, but we have something they don't." "What's that?" Bennett asked. "The truth. And once it's out, they can't make it disappear." As night fell, Alana reviewed everything they'd uncovered. The corruption went deeper than anyone had imagined, reaching into every level of law enforcement and government. But with each new revelation, each piece of evidence, each witness statement, the web became clearer. Carter's arrogance in arresting her had provided the opening they needed. But this was never about one corrupt cop. It was about exposing a system that turned law enforcement into a tool for human trafficking, that transformed police departments into recruitment centers for modern-day slavery. Her secure phone buzzed one final time that night. A message from General Morrison. "White House is asking questions. Stand firm. You have full backing from Joint Chiefs." Alana allowed herself a small smile. The conspirators were powerful, but they'd made a crucial mistake. They'd assumed their badges and political connections made them untouchable. They never considered that someone might be watching from an even higher level. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more threats, more attempts to shut down the investigation. But the truth was already spreading, seeping through the cracks in their carefully constructed system of corruption. And once exposed to light, some secrets can never be buried again. The fluorescent lights hummed in the federal holding cell as Officer Ethan Carter stared at the concrete wall, his crisp uniform replaced by orange prison scrubs. The past 72 hours had stripped away everything he'd believed made him untouchable. Through the reinforced window, he watched other officers being processed, men and women he'd worked alongside, trained with, shared drinks with after shifts. All of them wore the same shell-shocked expression he saw in the mirror each morning. Special Agent Robert Walker stood outside the cell, methodically reviewing notes from their latest round of interviews. The leather of his shoulder holster creaked as he shifted position. "Your training officer, James Wilson. His house is empty, bank accounts drained. Any idea where he might have gone?" Carter's throat felt dry. Wilson always talked about having backup plans, escape routes, said smart cops need an exit strategy when things go bad. He rubbed his face with both hands, never told me specifics, just liked reminding me he was untouchable. "These backup plans," Walker pressed, sliding a document through the cell's transfer slot. "Would they explain the offshore accounts we found? $5 million moved through shell companies in the past 3 years. The paper showed transaction records, dates, amounts. Each entry made Carter's stomach twist tighter. How much had Wilson hidden from him? How deep did this really go? Across town, Colonel Alana Briggs stood in what had once been the police evidence room, now transformed into a command center. Evidence boards covered every wall, photos and documents connected by a web of red string. Each thread led to another piece of corruption, another shadowy connection, another hidden crime. Michael Bennett, her attorney, burst through the door clutching a tablet. "Senator Phillips just released a statement, called us a politically motivated witch hunt, and demanded congressional oversight hearings." Alana studied a document detailing wire transfers between Phillips's shell companies and various police departments. "Let him make noise. Every public statement just gives us more threads to pull." She tapped a photo of Phillips at a police foundation fundraiser. "He's scared. They all are." A junior analyst rushed in, nearly dropping an armful of printouts. "Colonel, we found something in the encrypted files from the police foundation's server. These recruitment patterns, they're deliberate." The papers revealed a systematic approach to identifying and grooming potential officers. Psychological. Evaluations were manipulated, background checks altered, supervisors pressured to fast-track specific candidates. Each document showed how the corrupt system manufactured its own protectors. "They weren't just looking for corrupt cops," Alana observed, tracing a pattern of promotions. "They were creating them, building officers who would be dependent on the system, who would have too much to lose if they ever tried to break free." Her secure phone buzzed, a message from military intelligence. "Multiple high-level targets moving assets offshore. Timeline accelerating, possible major action imminent." "They're running," Walker said, reading over her shoulder. "No," Alana corrected. "They're consolidating resources, preparing to fight back." In an exclusive club downtown, Senator Richard Phillips sat in a leather chair, nursing a scotch as he met with Police Chief Robert Andrews and other key figures in their operation. The wood-paneled room felt smaller than usual, the air heavy with tension. "This has gone too far," Phillips growled, his polished veneer cracking. "That woman isn't just threatening our operation. She's threatening the entire system we've built. Decades of work, billions in revenue, all our political capital, at risk because of one self-righteous colonel." Andrews nodded grimly, his uniform collar damp with sweat. "My contacts say she's got backing at the highest levels. Joint Chiefs, DOJ, even whispers of White House interest. We can't just make her disappear." "Then we make her irrelevant," Thomas Burke spoke up from the corner. As CEO of United Continental Holdings, he'd helped build their private prison empire. "We have contingencies for this. Time to use them." Phillips studied his glass. "The offshore accounts being moved," Burke confirmed. "Shell companies dissolved, records erased. By morning, the paper trail will be gone, and our special facilities being cleared as we speak. All assets in transit to secure locations." Back at the federal building, internal affairs officers worked through interviews with Carter's former colleagues. The thin blue line was crumbling as officers rushed to cut deals, each revelation exposing more layers of the conspiracy. Officer Sarah Mitchell sat rigid in an interview room, her voice trembling as she testified. The warehouse facilities weren't just for processing arrests, they were evaluation centers. Every arrest was actually an audition. Young, healthy subjects with no strong family connections. They were worth more on the international market. As she spoke, Teams of federal agents raided similar facilities across 3 states. Each location revealed the same pattern: fake arrest records, medical evaluation rooms, transport documentation leading to private airports. Alana reviewed body cam footage from the raids, her jaw tight. This isn't just about corrupt cops anymore. This is a multinational trafficking operation using law enforcement as its recruitment arm. A senior FBI analyst appeared in the doorway, face pale. "Colonel, we found something in Wilson's encrypted files. Lists of every officer he trained, every department he consulted for. The network, it's bigger than we thought." The lists showed hundreds of names, each representing a potential collaborator or witness. But as teams began locating the officers, a disturbing pattern emerged. Many had already disappeared, leaving behind hastily written resignation letters and empty homes. They're cleaning house, Walker realized, removing anyone who could testify. Alana's phone buzzed again, a warning from her military contacts. Multiple private jets requesting emergency clearance at regional airports. High-value targets moving, possible mass exodus attempted. She immediately began coordinating with federal aviation authorities, but she knew some would slip through. The corrupt system had too many escape routes, too many hidden resources. Into his cell, Carter received an unexpected visitor. Captain David Parker, his former supervisor, sat across the interview table, looking older than Carter remembered. "You don't look good, kid," Parker observed, his voice carrying false sympathy. "Why are you here?" Carter asked, suspicion clear in his tone. "To offer you a way out. Some people still think you could be useful. Play your cards right, you might avoid spending the rest of your life in prison." Carter leaned forward. "What people?" "Important people. People who remember loyalty." Parker slid a business card across the table. "Make the call. Tell them everything you've told the feds was coerced. Say Colonel Briggs threatened you, manipulated your statements." Before Carter could respond, federal agents burst in, arresting Parker on the spot. The captain's visit had been monitored, adding another piece to the conspiracy puzzle. Hours later, Alana stood before a wall of surveillance photos. Each showed key players in the corruption network: judges, politicians, business leaders. Red X's marked those already in custody or cooperating, but too many remained active, dangerous. "They're going to try something big," she told her team. "All these moves, all these consolidations, they're preparing for a major counterstrike." As if to confirm her words, news alerts began flooding in. A mysterious fire at a federal evidence facility destroyed thousands of case files. A key witness died in a suspicious car accident. 3 federal agents investigating private prison connections were ambushed by unknown assailants. "They're sending a message," Walker said, reviewing the reports. "Showing us what happens to people who dig too deep." Alana's secure phone buzzed yet again. This time the message was direct. "Stand down now. Final warning." Instead of backing off, she called an emergency briefing. Her entire team assembled, along with representatives from multiple federal agencies. "They think fear will protect them," she addressed the room. "They've built their power on silence and intimidation, but we have something stronger: truth. Every threat they make, every witness they silence, every piece of evidence they try to destroy just proves how deep this corruption goes." She pointed to the evidence wall. "This isn't just about dirty cops anymore. This is about a system that turned law enforcement into a human trafficking operation, that used badges and uniforms to hide modern-day slavery. We shut this down now, or it spreads further." As she spoke, more reports arrived. Senator Phillips had called an emergency press conference, planning to publicly discredit the investigation. United Continental Holdings began emergency restructuring, moving assets and destroying records. But Alana's team had anticipated these moves. As Phillips approached the podium for his press conference, federal agents were already raiding his office and home. As United Continental executed its restructuring, forensic accountants tracked every transaction. The corrupt system's power had always depended on shadows, operating just below the surface, hidden behind badges and political influence. Now, exposed to light, those shadows were vanishing. In his cell, Carter watched the news coverage on a small TV. He saw his former allies falling one by one, their carefully constructed world crumbling. The power he'd once thought was absolute now looked fragile, built on foundations of lies and exploitation. A new message appeared on Alana's phone, this time from General Morrison himself. White House briefed on situation. Full support authorized. End this. She gathered her core team. They're desperate now. That makes them dangerous. Everyone stays alert, works in pairs. No one goes anywhere alone. As night fell, the city's power dynamics continued to shift. More officers came forward, trading information for leniency. More politicians distanced themselves from Phillips and his allies. More evidence emerged of the vast criminal enterprise that had operated behind the badge. In secure locations across the city, federal teams prepared for coordinated raids. The next 24 hours would be crucial, striking before the remaining. Conspirators could destroy more evidence or silence more witnesses. Alana reviewed the operational plans, knowing the corrupt system wouldn't go down without a fight. They had power, money, and decades of entrenched influence, but their greatest weapon, fear, was losing its edge. Through his cell window, Carter watched more former colleagues being let in. Each arrest, each revelation, each piece of exposed corruption stripped away another layer of the lies he'd built his career on. In their private club, Phillips and his remaining allies made desperate plans. Their network was unraveling, their power structure collapsing. They had one card left to play, a final devastating counterattack that would either save their operation or destroy everything in the attempt. But they didn't realize that Alana's team was already 10 steps ahead. Every move they planned, every resource they tried to access, every escape route they considered was being monitored. The hunters had indeed become the hunted. The very system they'd built to protect themselves, surveillance, informants, coordinated operations, was now being used to bring them down. As midnight approached, Alana received one final message. Operation compromised. Extreme response. Authorized. Burn it all. The words confirmed her suspicions. The corrupt forces weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were willing to destroy everything to avoid exposure. She gathered her team for a final briefing. Whatever happens in the next 24 hours, remember why we're here. This isn't about taking down dirty cops or corrupt politicians. This is about ending a system that turned law enforcement into a tool for human trafficking, that used badges and authority to hide modern slavery. Around the city, federal teams moved into position. The next phase would be decisive. Simultaneous raids on multiple locations, cutting off escape routes and communication channels. In his cell, Carter made a decision. Reaching for the card Parker had left, he began writing, not to ask for help, but to document everything he knew. Names, dates, locations, operations. A full confession that would help destroy the system he'd once served. The power dynamics had shifted completely. The badges that had once made them untouchable now marked them as targets. The authority they'd abused was being stripped away, revealing the criminals beneath the uniforms. Alana's phone buzzed one last time that night. A simple message from her military command. Execute. The next few hours would determine everything. The corrupt system would either be destroyed completely or lash out with devastating force. Either way, there was no going back. The hunters had become the hunted, and the war was about to enter its final phase. Raindrops pelted the windows of the safe house as Ethan Carter peered through the blinds, his hand instinctively reaching for a weapon that was no longer there. The Federal Protection Detail had insisted on moving him after the first attempt on his life. A random shooting that had left his apartment riddled with bullets and 2 federal agents wounded. The memory of that night still made his hands shake. He'd been in the bathroom when the first shots tore through his living room window. Glass shattered, bullets thudded into walls, and professional killers moved with military precision. Only the quick action of his protection detail had saved his life. "They're getting desperate," Special Agent Walker had said while examining the aftermath. "This wasn't a warning. They were trying to silence you permanently." Now, 3 days later, Carter watched shadows move across rain-slicked streets. wondering which ones wanted him dead. His former colleagues, the corrupt system he'd served, the powerful figures he'd helped protect, any of them could be gunning for him now. His burner phone buzzed, a secure line connected only to Colonel Alana Briggs's team. "We need to move, now." Carter grabbed his pre-packed bag, following practiced emergency protocols. The safe house door opened to reveal two heavily armed federal agents in tactical gear. "Cars waiting in the garage," one agent said tersely. "Stay between us." They moved swiftly through the building's service corridors, their footsteps echoing off concrete walls. In the garage, an armored SUV idled, its engine a low rumble in the underground space. As they approached the vehicle, movement caught Carter's eye, a shadow where there shouldn't be one, the glint of metal in darkness. "Down!" he shouted, tackling the nearest agent as gunfire erupted. Bullets pinged off concrete pillars and the SUV's armored exterior. The second agent returned fire, forcing the attackers to take cover. More federal agents emerged from hiding spots, turning the ambush back on the attackers. In the chaos of gunfire and shouted commands, Carter caught glimpses of their assailants. Men in tactical gear, moving with professional precision. Former military, he would tell Walker later. Maybe private contractors. Definitely not street thugs. The firefight ended as quickly as it began. 2 attackers dead, 1 wounded, the rest melting away into the night. The wounded man carried no ID, but his tattoos told a story. Private military contractor, the kind of professional killer that corrupt powers hired when they needed problems to disappear. Hours later, Carter sat across from Colonel Briggs in a new safe house, this one a fortified federal facility outside the city. "You understand what this means?" Alana asked, studying his face. "They're not just trying to silence you anymore. You're a loose end they need to eliminate." Carter nodded, his former cockiness replaced by grim understanding. "They think I know too much, and they're right. Tell me, it goes deeper than you know. The trafficking operation, the corrupt cops, the political protection, that's just the surface." Carter's voice shook slightly. "There are facilities across the country. Private prisons are just a cover. The real money comes from what happens inside." He described a system of modern slavery, where arrested individuals disappeared into a network of secret facilities. Young, healthy victims were processed, evaluated, and sold to buyers around the world. Others were used for forced labor, medical experiments, or worse. "Wilson showed me one of the processing centers last year," Carter continued. "Said it was my final test proving I could be trusted. They had it set up like a regular booking facility, but nothing was real. The paperwork, the charges, the system, all fake, just a way to make people disappear legally." Alana recorded everything, her expression remaining professionally neutral even as the horrors mounted. Names, dates, locations. Carter provided them all, painting a picture of corruption that stretched from street-level cops to the highest levels of government. "Senator Phillips isn't just providing political cover," Carter revealed. "He's one of the primary architects. His private prison companies are fronts for the trafficking operation. Every time we arrested someone who fit their criteria, the system made them vanish." As Carter talked, Alana's team worked to verify his claims. Financial records, travel documents, and surveillance footage began confirming his story piece by piece. "There's more," Carter said, his voice dropping lower. "Wilson told me about contingency plans. If the operation was ever exposed, they had protocols, ways to eliminate evidence, silence witnesses, and destroy anyone who threatened them." "What kind of protocols?" "Everything from targeted assassinations to mass casualty events. They called it the Scorched Earth Protocol. If they can't protect the operation, they'll burn everything down rather than let it be exposed." Alana's phone buzzed with urgent messages. Multiple federal facilities reported break-in attempts. Secure servers crashed under coordinated cyber attacks. Key witnesses faced simultaneous threats. "They're moving faster than we anticipated," Walker observed, reviewing the reports. "Because they know what Carter can reveal," Alana responded. "We need to move now, before they can destroy more evidence or eliminate more witnesses." She turned back to Carter. "We can protect you, but I need everything. Every detail, every name, every operation you know about. Once you start, there's no going back. Carter thought about his former life. The power he'd felt wearing the badge, the sense of invincibility that came with being part of the corrupt system. All of it built on human suffering, on lives destroyed for profit. I'll tell you everything, he decided, but not just in statements. I want to testify. Put me in front of a grand jury, let me help bring them down. Alana studied him carefully. You understand the risks? These people have resources, connections, trained killers. They'll do anything to stop you from testifying. I understand. But I need to do this. Need to make something right. As they prepared for Carter's testimony, the corrupt system launched its counterattack. News stories appeared questioning the investigation's legitimacy. Political allies called for congressional hearings. Private security firms mobilized, their operatives hunting for weaknesses in federal protection details. In his private office, Senator Phillips received updates on the situation. Carter needs to be eliminated before he can testify. Whatever, it costs. But the federal team had anticipated these moves. As Phillips's hired killers searched for Carter, they found only decoys and traps. As corrupt officials tried to derail the investigation, they encountered layers of protection backed by the highest levels of government. Carter spent days working with federal prosecutors, providing detailed testimony about every aspect of the corruption he'd witnessed. Each revelation strengthened the case while putting him in greater danger. The processing centers are just the first stage, he explained, marking locations on a map. They evaluate the merchandise and sort them into categories. The young and healthy go to international buyers. The strong ones go to secret labor camps. Others. He paused, fighting nausea. Others go to private research facilities, places where they can disappear completely. As Carter talked, federal teams moved against the locations he identified. Each raid confirmed his testimony, uncovering evidence of systematic human trafficking hidden behind badges and official paperwork. But the corrupt system wasn't going down without a fight. Another safe house was attacked, forcing Carter's protection detail to fight off more professional killers. Cyber attacks targeted federal databases containing his testimony. Corrupt officials scrambled to destroy evidence before it could be seized. In a secure conference room, Alana coordinated the federal response. They're getting sloppy, she observed. Desperate people make mistakes. Walker nodded, reviewing surveillance photos. Carter's testimony is hurting them more than they expected. They've never had someone so high up turn against them. That's why they're trying so hard to silence him, Alana said. He's not just a witness, he's proof that their system isn't invincible. Carter's protection detail reported another attempt on his life. This time, a sophisticated poison gas attack that failed only because of stringent security protocols. They're escalating, Walker warned, using more extreme methods, taking bigger risks. Because they know we're close, Alana responded. Carter's testimony is just the start. Once we expose the full scope of their operation, everything falls apart. In his secured room, Carter continued working with prosecutors, detailing years of corruption, names of corrupt officers, judges who took bribes, politicians who provided cover. Each revelation another nail in the conspiracy's coffin. But even as he cooperated, Carter knew the danger was growing. The corrupt system had too much to lose. Too many resources, too many desperate players willing to do anything to protect themselves. His burner phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. You can still save yourself. Last chance. Carter showed the message to Walker. Wilson. Has to be. Can you trace it? Walker asked a tech specialist. Signals bouncing through multiple proxies. But we might be able to. The specialist never finished his sentence. An explosion rocked the building, shattering windows and filling corridors with smoke. Multiple breaches, security teams reported. Armed hostiles entering through sublevels. As alarms blared, Carter's protection detail moved him toward a reinforced panic room. Through smoke and chaos, he glimpsed professional killers moving with military precision. This is different, he told Walker as they secured the room. This isn't just an assassination attempt. They're trying to take me alive. To make an example, Walker realized, show others what happens to people who betray them. But Alana's team had prepared for even this scenario. As the attackers breached lower levels, federal response teams moved into position. The building's security systems, far more sophisticated than the attackers realized, helped coordinate the counterattack. "Your friend Wilson's getting sloppy," Alana told Carter through the panic room's comm system. "We've been tracking his communications. He led us right to their command center." The fighting lasted 20 minutes. When it ended, the attackers lay dead or captured, their military precision no match for federal operators working on their home ground. "They're running out of options," Walker observed, reviewing casualties. "Each failed attempt costs them resources they can't replace." But Carter knew better. "This was just a test," he said, "probing our defenses, learning our protocols. The real attack is still coming." His words proved prophetic. Over the next 48 hours, the corrupt system launched a coordinated offensive. Cyber attacks targeted federal communications. Corrupt officials tried to freeze federal accounts. Professional killers probed security at multiple locations. Through it all, Carter continued working with prosecutors, providing testimony that would help destroy the system he'd once served. Each revelation brought more danger, but also more evidence against the conspiracy. "You're doing the right thing," Alana told him during a brief security pause. "Your testimony is helping us save lives." Carter nodded, but his expression remained troubled. "They're still out there, still operating. Every day we wait, more people disappear into their system." "Not for much longer," Alana assured him. "Your testimony is the key. Once we present this to a grand jury," a massive explosion cut her off closer than the previous one. The building shook, lights flickered, and emergency systems activated. "Multiple breaches," security reported. "They're coming through the walls." This time, the attack was overwhelming. Dozens of professional killers struck simultaneously, using military-grade weapons and equipment. They fought with the desperation of men who knew failure meant prison or death. In the chaos of close-quarter combat, Carter made a decision. While federal agents fought to protect him, he accessed a computer terminal and began transmitting files. "What are you doing?" Walker demanded, providing covering fire as attackers tried to breach their position. "Making sure the truth gets out," Carter replied, fingers flying over keys. "Sending everything to news outlets, human rights organizations, foreign governments. Even if they get me, the evidence survives." The fighting intensified. Smoke-filled corridors, gunfire echoed off walls, and trained killers pushed closer to their target. But they'd underestimated federal resources. As the attackers focused on breaching internal defenses, more federal teams arrived. The hunters found themselves hunted, their escape routes cut off, their tactical advantage evaporating. In the end, the attack failed like all the others. But this time was different. Among the dead attackers, federal agents found someone they recognized. James Wilson, Carter's former training officer. "He led the assault personally," Walker reported. "Must have been desperate." Carter stared at his former mentor's body, seeing not the corrupt officer who taught him to abuse power, but a desperate man who died trying to protect a criminal empire. "It's not over," he told Alana. "Wilson was just one piece. The real powers, the ones at the top, they're still out there." "But they're running out of options," Alana responded. "Your testimony, combined with everything we've seized, they can't hide anymore." As federal teams secured the facility, Carter returned to working with prosecutors. His testimony would help expose decades of corruption, save countless lives, and bring down powerful figures who'd thought themselves untouchable. But he knew the danger wasn't over. Somewhere out there, desperate people were planning their next move, willing to destroy everything rather than face justice. The war wasn't over. It was about to enter its most dangerous phase. Colonel Alana Briggs stood before the Congressional Oversight Committee, her military bearing unwavering as camera flashes illuminated the packed hearing room. Behind her, rows of journalists scribbled notes while television cameras broadcast every word nationwide. "The evidence we've uncovered reveals a criminal enterprise operating within law enforcement agencies across multiple states," she testified, her voice steady and clear. "This operation used police powers to facilitate human trafficking, turning vulnerable citizens into commodities for international sale. The committee members shifted uncomfortably as Alana presented document after document, each one revealing another layer of corruption. Bank records showed millions flowing through shell companies. Surveillance footage captured arrests that led to trafficking. Internal communications detailed the system's methodical operation. Senator Phillips sat in the back row, his usual polished demeanor cracking as he watched his empire crumble. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from other conspirators, each one more desperate than the last. Our sources within law enforcement identified potential victims using specific criteria, Alana continued. Young, healthy individuals with minimal family connections. They would be arrested on fabricated charges, then disappeared into a network of private facilities. She gestured to a digital display showing a map of the operation. Red dots marked processing centers, transit routes, and holding facilities. Each location represented lives destroyed, families torn apart, people reduced to merchandise. We've confirmed at least 3,000 victims processed through this system in the past 5 years alone. The actual number may be significantly higher. In a secure room elsewhere in the Capitol building, Ethan Carter prepared for his own testimony. Federal agents surrounded him, knowing that even here, the corrupt system might try one final attack. The committee's ready for you, Special Agent Walker informed him. Remember, stick to what you witnessed personally. Let the evidence speak for itself. Carter nodded, adjusting his tie. The past week had aged him visibly. The weight of his guilt, the constant danger, the knowledge of how many lives he'd helped destroy. But today, he had a chance to help make things right. As he walked toward the hearing room, his secure phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Still time to walk away. Accident on the Capitol steps. Tragic but understandable. Carter showed the message to Walker, who immediately contacted security teams. They're getting desperate, the agent observed, running out of options. In the hearing room, Alana concluded her testimony with a final revelation. We've identified connections between this trafficking operation and senior government officials, including members of Congress, federal judges, and corporate executives. The room erupted in shouted questions and camera flashes. In the back row, Senator Phillips stood abruptly and moved toward the exit, only to find federal agents blocking his path. Senator Phillips, one agent said quietly, "Please come with us. We have some questions about your private prison operations." As Phillips was led away, more arrests began across the city. Federal teams moved against judges who'd rubber-stamped false warrants, prosecutors who'd buried evidence, executives who'd profited from human suffering. Carter's testimony came next, his words carrying the weight of personal experience. He described the system from the inside, how officers were corrupted, how victims were selected, how the operation maintained its secrecy through violence and intimidation. My training officer, James Wilson, told me it was about power. Carter testified. Said the badge made us untouchable. But really, we were just traffickers with badges, destroying lives to feed a machine built on human suffering. In a luxury penthouse across town, Thomas Burke watched the testimony on multiple screens while his security team prepared for evacuation. As CEO of United Continental Holdings, he'd helped build the infrastructure that made the trafficking operation possible. How long until the plane is ready? He demanded into his phone. 30 minutes, sir. But there's a problem. The FBI has frozen all corporate accounts. And the private airfield, there are federal agents everywhere. Burke slammed the phone down, his carefully constructed escape plan crumbling. Decades of corruption, billions in profits, all coming apart because one colonel wouldn't back down. His private elevator hummed to life, security monitors showing armed men ascending. Burke reached for his safe, but before he could open it, the doors opened to reveal Special Agent Walker and a tactical team. "Thomas Burke," Walker announced, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, human trafficking, and about 24 other federal charges." As Burke was led away in handcuffs, similar scenes played out across the city. The corrupt system's leadership, accustomed to wielding power from the shadows, found themselves exposed to the harsh light of justice. In the hearing room, Carter's testimony continued, each revelation driving another nail into the conspiracy's coffin. He named names, provided dates, detailed operations. The carefully constructed wall of silence crumbled as he exposed decades of corruption. But the system's remaining powers weren't finished. As federal teams executed arrest warrants, they encountered armed resistance. Private security forces, hired killers, and corrupt officers fought to protect their masters or destroy evidence. Alana coordinated the federal response from a command center, tracking multiple operations simultaneously. Team 3, be advised, armed hostiles at the warehouse. Team 7, courthouse secure, moving to secondary targets. Reports flooded in from across the country as other jurisdictions launched their own investigations. The evidence Carter had helped expose revealed similar operations in other cities, each one using the same playbook of corruption and trafficking. Senator Phillips, in federal custody, made one last attempt to save himself. "I want to make a deal," he told interrogators. "I have information about operations even Colonel Briggs doesn't know about." But his offer came too late. The evidence they'd gathered, combined with Carter's testimony, had already exposed the full scope of his crimes. His power, like his freedom, was gone. At a private airfield outside the city, federal teams intercepted a group of conspirators attempting to flee the country. The ensuing firefight left 3 mercenaries dead and several high-ranking officials in custody. "They're running scared," Walker reported to Alana. "Every escape route we identify, every safe house we raid, they're losing options fast." But the most dangerous players were still out there, the ones with nothing left to lose, willing to destroy everything rather than face justice. In a secure facility across town, a team of corrupt officials initiated their final contingency plan. Computer systems crashed, files were deleted, and evidence began disappearing as sophisticated viruses attacked federal databases. "They're trying to erase everything," a tech specialist reported. "Attacking our servers, corrupting backups, destroying records." But Alana's team had anticipated this. "Let them try," she responded. "We've got copies of everything. Multiple secure locations, redundant systems. They can't bury the truth anymore." The attacks continued throughout the day. Professional killers tried to breach federal buildings. Cyber attacks targeted government systems. Corrupt officials attempted to destroy evidence or silence witnesses. Each attempt failed. The federal response, backed by military and intelligence resources, proved too strong for even this sophisticated criminal enterprise. As night fell, Carter watched from a secure location as news channels reported the unfolding operation. Hundreds of arrests, millions in seized assets, and decades of corruption exposed to public view. His secure phone buzzed one final time, a message from the same unknown number. "You deserve what's coming. Everyone you betrayed, everyone you exposed. We don't forget." But the threats had lost their power. The badge that once made him feel untouchable had become a symbol of his shame. Now, helping bring down the corrupt system offered a chance at redemption. In her command center, Alana received updates from teams across the country. Similar operations were launching in other cities, targeting corrupt departments that had copied the same playbook. "It's not just about this one operation anymore," she told her team. "We're exposing a nationwide network of corruption and trafficking. Every department we investigate, every officer we turn, reveals more connections." The evidence they'd gathered painted a horrifying picture. Thousands of victims processed through fake arrests, millions in profits from human trafficking, decades of systematic corruption protected by badges and political power. But now that power was crumbling. The corrupt system, built on fear and secrecy, couldn't survive exposure to light. Each arrest, each revelation, each piece of evidence made it harder for the remaining conspirators to hide. In secure facilities across the city, federal teams processed arrested officials, judges who'd sold their authority, officers who'd betrayed their oaths, politicians who'd protected traffickers for profit. Each one faced justice they'd thought their power would protect them from. The operation continued through the night. More arrests, more evidence seized, more corrupt operations shut down. The system that had seemed invincible just days ago was being dismantled piece by piece. In the early hours of morning, Alana received word that the last major player had been captured. The corrupt senator who'd helped build the trafficking operation was found trying to cross the Canadian border with fake documents and millions in cash. "It's over," Walker announced. "The leadership's in custody, the infrastructure's dismantled, the evidence is secure." But Alana knew better. The operation's finished, but the fight isn't over. There are other departments, other cities, other corrupt systems waiting to be exposed. She turned to address her team. "What we've done here is just the beginning. We've shown that no one is untouchable, that badges and political power can't hide corruption forever." Carter, watching the sunrise from his secure room, felt a mix of relief and resolve. The system he'd once served was destroyed, its power broken, its leaders facing justice. But the real work, helping its victims, preventing new corruption, rebuilding trust in law enforcement, was just beginning. His testimony had helped expose decades of corruption, but he knew the price of redemption would be eternal vigilance. The power that corrupted him and others would always tempt those who wore the badge. Across the city, federal teams continued their work. Evidence was cataloged, witnesses protected, cases built against hundreds of corrupt officials. The machinery of justice, so long perverted to serve trafficking and corruption, was finally serving its true purpose. In her office, Alana reviewed preliminary reports from other cities, launching similar investigations. Each one revealed the same pattern: corrupt officers, trafficking operations, political protection. But each one also showed that the system could be broken, that truth could overcome power. The sun rose fully on a changed city. The corrupt powers that had seemed invincible were gone, their leaders in custody, their operations exposed. But more importantly, a message had been sent. No badge, no political office, no amount of money made anyone above the law. The fight against corruption would never end, but today had proved it could be won. The hunters had become the hunted, and justice had prevailed. Rain pattered against the windows of the federal courthouse as Judge William Harrison delivered his sentence. Ethan Carter stood in his prison jumpsuit, no longer the arrogant rookie cop who thought his badge made him untouchable. "Mr. Carter, while your cooperation proved invaluable in exposing this criminal enterprise, it doesn't erase your participation in it," Harrison declared, his voice echoing through the hushed courtroom. "Taking into account both your crimes and your assistance to federal authorities, this court sentences you to 20 years in federal prison." Carter nodded slightly, accepting the judgment. In the gallery, Colonel Alana Briggs watched the man whose arrest had started this whole investigation. His face showed neither protest nor surprise, just the quiet resignation of someone who understood the cost of redemption. The sentencing marked another milestone in the aftermath of exposing the trafficking operation. Across the country, similar scenes played out as corrupt officers, judges, and officials faced justice. The system that had seemed invincible just months ago now crumbled under the weight of its exposed crimes. At the city's police headquarters, newly appointed Chief Sarah Martinez oversaw another wave of resignations. Officers who hadn't been directly implicated but couldn't face the increased scrutiny turned in their badges. Each departure revealed how deeply corruption had infected the department. "We've lost nearly 40% of our force," Martinez reported, to the Civilian Oversight Board. "Between arrests, resignations, and officers under investigation, we're severely understaffed." "Better understaffed than corrupt," responded Oversight Chair Rachel Thompson. "We have a chance to rebuild this department the right way." The staffing crisis reflected a broader upheaval in law enforcement nationwide. As evidence from Carter's testimony exposed similar operations in other cities, departments faced their own reckonings. The public's trust, already fragile, had been shattered by revelations of systematic corruption. In his federal prison cell, Carter adjusted to his new reality. The walls were bare except for a single photo, his police academy graduation, a reminder of how far he'd fallen. His mail arrived pre-screened, his movements constantly monitored. Even in a maximum security facility, the remnants of the corrupt system might try to silence him. A guard appeared at his cell. "Carter, you have a visitor." In the prison's secure visiting room, Special Agent Walker sat waiting. "How are you holding up?" "Better than I deserve," Carter replied honestly. "Any news from the outside?" Walker nodded, sliding a file across the table. "Senator Phillips's trial started yesterday. The evidence is overwhelming. Decades of corruption, hundreds of trafficking victims, millions in dirty money. He's looking at life without parole." Carter examined the file, recognizing names and operations from his testimony. "What about the others? The ones who got away?" "Some disappeared overseas. Others are still out there trying to rebuild their networks, but they're running scared now. Nobody wants to risk being the next one exposed." The conversation was interrupted by alarms blaring through the prison. Guards rushed past the visiting room, responding to some unseen emergency. "What's happening?" Carter asked, tension evident in his voice. Walker's hand moved to his weapon. "Stay calm. Could be nothing." But it wasn't nothing. In the prison's medical wing, another former officer connected to the trafficking operation had been found dead, an apparent suicide that looked suspiciously like murder. "Third one this month," Walker reported later to Colonel Briggs. "They're cleaning house, eliminating anyone who might talk." Alana reviewed the incident reports in her new office at the Justice Department. The promotion recognized her role in exposing the trafficking operation, but it also reflected the government's commitment to rooting out similar corruption nationwide. "They're desperate," she observed. "Every elimination attempt, every cover-up just proves how deep this went, but they can't hide anymore." Her phone buzzed with updates from ongoing investigations. In Atlanta, federal agents had uncovered another trafficking network modeled after the one Carter exposed. In Chicago, a task force investigated judges who'd helped disappear victims into private prisons. In Los Angeles, a police foundation's financial records revealed connections to international criminal organizations. The revelation sparked protests nationwide. Citizens demanded accountability, transparency, and real reform. Police departments faced unprecedented scrutiny as the public realized how badges had been used to hide systematic criminal enterprises. The FBI's headquarters, analysts tracked the ripple effects of Carter's testimony. Private prison stocks plummeted as investigations exposed their role in trafficking. Police unions faced RICO investigations for protecting corrupt officers. Politicians who'd provided cover for the criminal enterprise watched their careers evaporate. But the most dramatic changes happened at street level. Officers who'd once operated with impunity found themselves under constant observation. Body cameras couldn't be turned off, reports couldn't be falsified, and abuse of power brought swift consequences. In her office, Chief Martinez reviewed applications for new officers. The department's reformed hiring standards emphasized community, connection, emotional intelligence, and ethical decision-making over traditional metrics. "We're not just rebuilding numbers," she explained to her command staff. "We're creating a new kind of department, one that serves the community instead of preying on it." The changes weren't easy. Veteran officers resisted increased oversight. Police unions fought accountability measures. Politicians worried about appearing soft on crime. But the evidence Carter had exposed made it impossible to maintain the status quo. At a national law enforcement conference, Colonel Briggs addressed police leaders from across the country. "What we uncovered wasn't just about corrupt individuals. It was about a system that enabled corruption, that turned police power into a tool for criminal enterprise. Real reform means changing that system." Her words carried extra weight as more departments faced their own scandals. The playbook Carter had exposed, targeting vulnerable individuals, falsifying arrests, trafficking victims through private facilities, appeared in city after city. In his cell, Carter received another piece of mail, a newspaper clipping, about Senator Phillips's trial. The once powerful politician now faced evidence from multiple witnesses, including other officials who'd chosen to cooperate rather than face longer sentences. But something about the clipping felt wrong. Hidden within the article's text, Carter spotted a coded message. "Remember who you betrayed. Nowhere is safe." He reported the threat to Walker, who added it to a growing file of similar warnings. The corrupt system might be broken, but its remnants still possessed resources and harbored vengeance. Those resources became evident when another attempt was made on Carter's life. A newly hired prison guard, his background check falsified, attempted to poison Carter's food. Only the heightened security protocols prevented success. They're still trying, Carter told Walker after the incident. Still thinking they can silence the truth. Let them try, Walker responded. Every attempt just proves why we had to shut them down. Across the country, the ripple effects continued. Civil rights attorneys used evidence from the trafficking investigation to overturn hundreds of convictions. Victims' families filed lawsuits against departments, officials, and private prison companies. Investigative journalists uncovered more connections between law enforcement and criminal enterprises. The Justice Department. Alana coordinated with task forces investigating similar operations nationwide. Each case revealed new variations on the same theme: power corrupted, badges misused, lives destroyed for profit. The pattern keeps repeating, she told her team. Different cities, different departments, but the same playbook. Find vulnerable people, abuse police power to make them disappear, profit from their exploitation. Her phone buzzed with another update, this time from international partners. The trafficking network's overseas connections had led to investigations in multiple countries. Criminal enterprises that had operated with impunity found themselves exposed. In the prison's library, Carter read about the changes his testimony had sparked. Police reform bills passed in multiple states. Departments adopted strict oversight measures. Private prison contracts faced intense scrutiny. But he also read about resistance, officers fighting accountability, unions protecting corruption, politicians trying to maintain the status quo. A new guard appeared at the library door. Carter, someone sent you a package. The package contained a single photograph, a crowded street scene where a red laser dot marked Carter's head. The message was clear. Even in prison, he wasn't safe. From revenge. Security footage revealed the package had been delivered by a former officer, someone connected to the trafficking operation. But when federal agents tried to locate him, they found only an empty apartment and a one-way ticket to a non-extradition country. They're not giving up, Walker told Alana during their weekly briefing. Every time we close one vulnerability, they find another. Because they know what's at stake, Alana responded. This isn't just about criminal enterprise anymore. It's about power. Who has it? Who controls it? Who faces consequences for abusing it? The consequences became clearer. Each day, more departments faced federal investigation. More officers chose cooperation over loyalty to corruption. More evidence emerged of systematic abuse of police power. At a police reform conference, Chief Martinez addressed a new class of recruits. The badge isn't a shield to hide behind. It's not a license for power. It's a symbol of public trust, and that trust has to be earned every day. Her words reflected a fundamental shift in law enforcement culture. The exposure of trafficking operations had forced departments nationwide to confront hard truths about power, corruption, and accountability. In his cell, Carter received a visit from someone unexpected, Officer Sarah Mitchell, one of the first to cooperate after his testimony exposed the trafficking operation. They offered me a deal, she told him. Tell them you lied. Say your testimony was coerced. Help them discredit the whole investigation. In exchange, they'd make sure we both walked free. And I told them to go to hell. Mitchell managed a small smile. Some things matter more than freedom. Her visit was interrupted by another prison lockdown. This time, investigators found sophisticated explosives hidden in the facility's ventilation system. Another attempt to silence those who'd exposed the truth. At the Justice Department, Alana reviewed reports of similar incidents nationwide. Former officers mysteriously dying before they could testify. Evidence disappearing from secure storage. Witnesses facing orchestrated intimidation campaigns. They're getting desperate, Walker observed. Running out of options, out of allies, out of places to hide. Desperate people are dangerous, Alana reminded him, especially ones who've had power and lost it. The danger became evident when another federal witness was found dead, this time a former prison executive who'd been preparing to testify about the private facility network's role in trafficking. But even these desperate acts couldn't stop the momentum of reform. Each attempt at silence, Each act of revenge only reinforced the need for fundamental change in law enforcement. In police academies across the country, Carter's case became a teaching tool. Cadets learned about the warning, signs of corruption, the importance of ethical policing, and the consequences of abusing power. The badge doesn't make you untouchable, instructors warned. It makes you accountable. That accountability extended beyond individual officers. Police unions faced new oversight. Department policies underwent public review. Private prison contracts required transparency and monitoring. At a congressional hearing, Alana testified about the ongoing efforts to prevent similar trafficking operations from re-emerging. We're not just prosecuting criminals who wore badges. We're changing the systems that allowed them to hide behind those badges. In his cell, Carter received news that Senator Phillips had been found dead before sentencing, an apparent suicide that bore hallmarks of professional elimination. "They're still out there," he told Walker during their next meeting. "Still operating in shadows, still protecting their interests. But they can't hide like before," Walker reminded him. "Can't operate with impunity. The light's too bright now." That light continued to expose similar operations across the country. Each investigation revealed new variations on the same theme: power corrupted, authority abused, lives destroyed for profit. But each exposure also revealed something else: the possibility of change, of reform, of rebuilding broken systems. The legacy of Carter's testimony wasn't just the criminals exposed or the operations shut down. It was the fundamental shift in how power and accountability functioned in law enforcement. The rain continued outside the prison as Carter returned to his cell. The walls still felt close, the future still uncertain. But something had changed, not just in the world outside, but in himself. The badge that once made him feel untouchable had become a lesson in the true meaning of power and responsibility. The system he'd helped expose continued to crumble, making way for something new, something better. The fight wasn't over. The remnants of corruption still lurked in shadows, still possessed resources and harbored vengeance. But they could no longer hide behind badges or operate with impunity. The hunters had truly become the hunted, and the world was better for it. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of justice, redemption, and the price of doing what's right. Drop a comment below. Would you have the courage to stand up against a corrupt system, even if it cost you everything?